Welcome to Education in Our Community. This show is very special to me because the guests that I met some years ago, I think it was over 10 years ago, I had the privilege of interviewing you. You are the great-granddaughter of Booker T. Washington, the founder of so many institutions in America. And your mother was alive at that time. So I had and your daughter was a teenager, I believe.
Right.
And we interviewed the three of you on a show. So we had three generations, I believe, at that time. And today our topic is Booker T. Washington Empowerment Network, Incorporated, and then a subtitle, Up from Freedom Project and the Freedom Journey. Our guest is Miss Sarah Washington O'Neill Rush. She has a background in marriage and family therapy, and that is her specialty area, I believe, and she has a vision. When I also talked with her and worked with her over the years, she developed a newsletter called Lifting the Veil. And I remember years ago when I was in high school, a friend of mine was from Tuskegee, and she sent me a picture of Booker T. Washington lifting the veil of ignorance from the slaves.
Yeah.
And I thought, I love that image. And then when you did Lifting the Veil newsletter, I thought it had tremendous potential and power, and hopefully that will be done again.
Yes,
At this point in time, you have a project that you have pulled together, and I believe the number 16 plays a role in your life. And when I first met you, the postman where I lived in the city of Alameda indicated I had just come back from a reunion of my high school, and I had served as a keynote speaker for our high school reunion, which was during the days of segregated education. So our school was named after James Weldon Williams, who was named after James Weldon Johnson, the great songwriter. And so he said to me, I know Booker T. Washington's great-granddaughter who lives down the street. So we met, and then we had you on our show.
Right.
And today you have developed something else, and I'd just like you to tell us what you're doing with Up from Freedom Project and the Freedom Journey.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. And I have as you mentioned, Booker T. Washington Empowerment Network is the umbrella nonprofit, and under that we've developed, and we're currently developing a program called Up from Freedom Project, and in that encompasses two different components, and one is a character education component that will go for maybe 16 to 20 weeks, and preferably after school or on Saturdays, working with at-risk disadvantaged youth and teaching them character education and some of the principles that Booker T. Washington talked about, education, excellence, leadership, personal responsibility. And from there, we will be preparing them for a sort of rite of passage project called the Freedom Journey. And the Freedom Journey will follow Booker T. Washington's footsteps from slavery to freedom. So we'll start out in Virginia, in Franklin County, where he was born a slave, and that's now a national monument, the plantation and the cabin there. From there, we'll go to Malden, West Virginia, where he went after slavery and where he worked in the coal mines and salt furnaces as a boy. And from there, we will do some walking and riding, as he mostly walked from there to Hampton, and we'll go to Hampton University, where the youth will have free leadership training. And from there, we'll go to Washington, D.C., and meet Congress people, including Diane Watson and Barbara Lee, and make a request to meet Barack Obama, Michelle Obama. And from there, we will end the trip at Tuskegee University, the university that Booker T. Washington founded so that former slaves could learn in 1881. And we will also have leadership training there at Tuskegee University. And then we'll come back home.
And you have a book called Character Building that I wish you would just share that image on the building, on the cover. And I understand this was written by Booker T. Washington.
It was.
What year? Was that 19?
I think it was over a few years, but from anywhere from 1895 to 1903. And it was probably published in 1903. And what it is, I'm reading this book now, and it's a compilation of the talks. He would give talks every Sunday to his students at Tuskegee about life, about character, about hard work, about education, about owning property and owning land, and the importance of not just getting an education, but when you come out from that education, that you use it to serve someone, or else it's no good. Mm-hmm. And so he would give these talks, and this is probably about at least 35 talks in here that he'd given to the students. And this was autographed. It was Booker T. Washington autographed the front inside cover to Andrew Carnegie, who was a good friend of his.
What did he say to Mr. Andrew Carnegie, the famous Carnegie family? Yes.
It says, to Mr. Andrew Carnegie, the benefactor of my race, a helper of humanity, and my personal friend, Booker T. Washington, December 4th, 1903.
1903. So that book is actually a historic book because it has his signature on it.
Yeah.
Wow. So Mr. Carnegie didn't get to keep it, I guess.
Well, this isn't an original signature, but I believe it's from the original signature, and they put them back into the books.
Oh, that is so beautiful. And I like the character building cover because it shows lifting the veil.
Right.
That he
right, and that's the statue that's in front of Tuskegee University, and that was actually dedicated to Booker T. Washington after he died, and a sculptor put on, or entitled it Lifting the Veil, that Booker T. Washington would lift the veil of ignorance from the slave's eyes.
Yes, and the empowerment with George Washington Carver having gone there as well. And I know that the grave for Carver is right next to Booker T. Washington.
Right, they're on the cemetery there. My mom is also buried there now, and my aunt, who just passed away in August, is buried there on campus. But yes, George Washington Carver played a significant role in Booker T. Washington's life as well, and he was the director of agriculture.
Yes, yeah, and the empowerment concept is what George Washington Carver had as well, in terms of making sure that the former slaves knew how to grow their crops and to use the soil productively. And I understand that many people, corporations, tried to pull him away from Tuskegee, but he wouldn't go.
Yeah, he left his whole life savings to Tuskegee when he died. He willed it to Tuskegee, and that's one thing that when there's misconceptions about Booker T. Washington just wanting blacks to be workers, and it's so far from the truth. And when you think about the people that he brought on board, such as George Washington Carver and others that don't have that name like that, but were just as talented to teach the students and to make them more than workers, but owners of land and property, and he felt like that was really important. And there's a book, Christian Business Legends, that says that by 1905, there were more black millionaires that came out of Tuskegee than Princeton, Harvard, and Yale combined.
Yes, it shows that there's this fallacy that if the intellect is developed, that it will all take care of itself. When in fact it isn't just about the intellect. It's about being able to being very practical, using those skills that require doing some things with your hands. And sometimes people don't realize that's ingenuity too. It's just that it doesn't all have to be intellectual activity. So I really appreciate what you're saying about empowerment. And I think that Booker T. Washington was about ownership of land and making the land serve the people and getting people to be productive, grow vegetables, grow crops, and then
and do what we've done all these years. We built the country. We built the one of the things when I went to Tuskegee for the first time in 1996 was seeing the buildings that are still in operation today that he built, he and former slaves, by hand, brick by brick, using bricks that they made, and the bricks were of such superior quality that they sold these bricks, and there's buildings all around the South today made from these same bricks. And so he took the model from Hampton that said education was about the head, the hand, and the heart combined.
The hand.
The head, the hand, and the heart.
Head, the hand, and the heart.
So, yes.
Yes, that is so important. That's three entities there.
Yes.
The head, the hand, and the heart.
Yeah.
And also, there's something with the number 16. You have 16 success principles, and then I think 16 is a number you're using with your project also.
Yes, well, it's a number, it's a theme in my life and an ongoing theme. And just to give a little bit of background, I grew up here in the Bay Area, in Oakland mostly.
And born in Berkeley?
Born in Berkeley. And my mother is from Tuskegee, Alabama. She was born and raised across the street from Tuskegee University, was Tuskegee Institute then.
Yes.
But here in California, she didn't talk much about her relationship to Booker T. Washington. So I grew up not knowing of the significance. And my father left pretty early in my life. And so I was a teenage mom, and a lot went with that, including some shame and things like that. And
at
just,
age 16?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, from the judgment that came along with that. And so it wasn't until, but still, I went to high school. I lived on my own at 17. I lived on 85th Avenue in the projects, raising my son, and just worked real hard on my life. Graduated from Oakland Tech 6 months ahead of my class. I had to get on 2 buses to go and go to school, but I did it, took my son to daycare, and never realizing, knew I was the great-granddaughter of Booker T. Washington, but didn't know what that meant, didn't care. I was just trying to survive. And it was in 1996 when 2 of my older cousins decided to give our first Booker T. Washington family reunion on the campus of Tuskegee University. And when we got there were news reporters and journalists and students and faculty and civic leaders, and they were asking for autographs, and they wanted to talk to us and take pictures with us. And I'm like, Mama, what is this? You know, she was still alive. She passed away in '99, but this was a few years before. And that's when I realized, and that's when I saw these buildings that he built, and that's when I started to study him and do research and realize, you know, all he'd done for society and humanity and America. And I went home and read Up From Slavery for the first time, and that's his best-selling autobiography that's never been out of print and was translated into over 17 different languages. I read that. I started to study my family, and I realized that I was the 16th. I have 15 cousins who are also the great-grandchildren, and I'm the baby. So I was the 16th of 16, and that turned that number around for me. And I just began to look at that. And I was born on February 16th. My son was born on September 16th. Tuskegee was opened 16 years after slavery. Booker T. Washington traveled to Hampton when he was 16 years old to get his education. And so I just feel like that number is in my life for a reason. So I made 16 success principles out of his philosophies, and that is what I want to use to empower youth that were where I was, just to show them if you know who you are and where you come from, it can change your life. It changed mine.
If you know where you come from, it will change. It can change your life.
Yeah, if you know your history.
If you
how
know
powerful.
Yes.
We were a long time ago, long before we had everything that we have today. We were powerful.
So the knowledge of your history is important, and then to value it, because I think part of the denial that occurred with former slaves or people who have ancestors who had that ancestry was that it was so painful that people just couldn't bear to even talk about it. And there was a great deal of shame that goes along with that history. But I think in the case of Booker T. Washington, there's nothing but pride to see how all of that up from slavery occurred. And I remember when I was going to elementary school, my 5th grade teacher would tell us about Booker T. Washington and George Washington Carver. And it was something we looked forward to every day. It was better than television because we didn't have a lot of fancy televisions back then. And so just to hear about George Washington Carver and Booker T. Washington, and then other people who went to Tuskegee. My 6th grade teacher also was a student at Tuskegee. And she used to see George Washington Carver on a daily basis going to the cafeteria. And it was just so interesting. And I'd like you to tell us more about the 16 as it relates to your journey for the the freedom journey?
Yeah. Well, it will be a program where we'll go through 16 success principles and those principles. And I'm going to be presenting this to Dewey in hopes Dewey High School, Alternative High School in Oakland, in the beginning of December, hoping to get youth there excited about a chance to do this and to go on the freedom journey and to give them something, because everybody wants to know, well, what's in it for me? You know, what am I going to get out of it? And so something more than what they're getting in the classroom, something that's tangible, something that they can reflect upon, and so that they can learn about. They'll help fundraise for the trip, for the airfare, for the different things that they'll need for the leadership training. They'll need clothing and things like that. But also we'll touch on mindsets, the mind, the body, character building, budgeting, delayed gratification, different things that just life skills that will take them from that time forward.
Yeah, I think the industrious, the word industry, I associate that word with Booker T. Washington also, being very industrious and very resourceful. And also in terms of how, when he gave that speech, I believe that they called an accommodation speech, but I think he was dealing with the reality of the time and the fact that that's right, and that to pull together the resources that were needed, that you had to know how to do that, and that was a skill that he used in how he spoke.
Right. And he was an optimist, and he looked at, he found the silver lining underneath the dark clouds. And in his book, Up from Slavery, he talks about how he read the Bible every day, and you could see it in his character where he didn't hate anybody. You know, he didn't hate his slave master. He knew that, you know, it's just time to keep going. Let's just keep moving. Let's do what we have. Well, let's use it and find opportunities. And nobody wants to hear us whining and crying and asking for this and that. We don't, you know, we can do this on our own. And Marcus Garvey actually came out here at the invitation of Booker T. Washington because he wanted to model his program in Jamaica after Booker T. Washington's Tuskegee Institute.
Is that right?
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know that.
That's right.
So,
yeah, because I know that we've heard about Du Bois and Garvey also, the fact that there was, I think that there tends to be this, where people are not always on the same page, but they're really moving ahead in their own way. And I think Garvey, just to hear that he had that connection with Booker T. Washington.
Yeah, and Du Bois and Booker T. Washington were also, they were friends before they split, and they were never enemies. Du Bois even said it was more his followers that were against him than me. He didn't believe in everything Washington did, but he said, he referred to him as a Joshua of God. Let's hold his hands as long as he's holding up the masses of people. And he went with him to see Rockefeller and Carnegie to get money for Tuskegee University. But people, we tend to shine a light on the division and stay divided. But both their philosophies back then were needed.
I'm so glad you shared that about Du Bois, saying that it was about, he helped him with the work collaborating to get the resources that Tuskegee needed.
Right.
And that shows that a partnership there. And that's how people can work together. But as you said, it's how the general public doesn't know those things that occur one-on-one. And that's why sometimes we need to have much more of an orientation about the reality of how things happen. Yes. So your project will be with 16 young people. Is that the number also?
Well, 12 to 16 would be ideal, but if I only get 5, I'm ready to start with 5. We'd like to make this something national. I want to start in Oakland because I'm from Oakland and this is where I got my start. But again, 16 would be ideal. I'm starting at Dewey to see if I can get some kids to come on board there. I hope that I can. My heart is for youth and helping them to
Now, if someone watched this show and watches this show and sees your phone number on the screen and wants to call, and I think we have your website on there. I have the number from your brochure. You had a brochure that was about the Booker T. Washington Empowerment Network.
It's over on the stand.
If they were to call and show an interest with the age group, you're looking at ages, what age group?
from 9th to 11th grade.
9th to 11th grade. So if someone called, would you want that to happen, or you want to restrict it to the Dewey?
No, I'd love to talk to people about the possibilities.
Okay, because there might be people who would listen to this show and really want to connect with this effort.
Yes, I'm primarily interested in working with at-risk, disadvantaged youth who want to do better, but they lack the resources to do so.
Right.
And that they believe that they can, and all they need is a little bit of help.
And inspiration.
Yes.
And I believe when you talk about this, those places that they will go to, where he was born in Virginia.
Yeah, Franklin County, Virginia. Yeah, many of these youth, they haven't been out of the Bay Area. They haven't been on BART. They haven't been to San Francisco. You know, so to take them on an airplane, and you know, we'll have a couple of parent representatives, and also in the organization I will do case management with the family, you know, to help them, because of course, I mean, if the kids don't have food, or if there are other things going on that they need help with, we're going to be prepared to do that as well.
Really?
Yeah.
You will be able to work with the families?
Yeah, or at least to connect them to agencies. I've been developing a partnership, having good discussions with the Urban Services YMCA, and just trying to develop other partnerships with their places that I can refer them, and so that we're all working together as a community.
Yes, there are a variety of groups that I'm sure would connect with you. Some of them are like the Urban Male Initiative. That's with the health department for the Alameda County, and that's a very prominent group. And then there's the Village Connect. I heard about that recently.
Right. Yes, and I learned about that too.
Yes. So I'm thinking that many of the churches also would have young people and after-school projects as well.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. That is such a beautiful image on the cover. That sculpture, I bet it's been there for many years, I'm sure.
I believe it was erected in 1923.
1923.
Yes, and he died in 1915.
1915.
So this was someone who admired him greatly, the sculptor.
Yes.
And now it's in the front, the entrance when you come into Tuskegee University, where my daughter is right now. My daughter, I'm so proud. She's my youngest, and she's a freshman, and this is actually her dorm at Tuskegee. This isn't one of the original buildings, but it's Whitehall.
Yes, it looks brand new. It looks like a building in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, and she was at a reunion there. We go there every other year. We're going next year for our reunion. And she was at a reunion there when she was like 9 years old, and she said she wanted to go to school at Tuskegee. And so in the 12th grade, I didn't think that would stick, and she'd applied to all kinds of schools and got accepted and ended up at Tuskegee. And you know, she's the last born, and so to have one do that, now that I know my history, is just like a blessing to me, and we're all so proud of her.
Oh, that is truly remarkable, because when I met you, you had said something about you had not had a family reunion before. That was in 1996, I believe?
In 1996 was the first one, and just an interesting fact about that is that with my daughter being at Tuskegee, she's also there with another freshman, Lee Adams' great-granddaughter. And Lee Adams, I believe I'm saying his name right, is the person that they called upon for political clout. He owned businesses and had a lot. He's a black guy in Tuskegee, Alabama. They wanted him to bring on people to vote. And they said, what do you want in order for us to get this? And he said, I want a school for blacks. And so that's why Tuskegee, they called in Booker T. Washington to open Tuskegee University, or institute at the time. Well, his great-granddaughter just happens to be there, too.
Oh, his great-granddaughter.
Yeah.
Oh, and
Lewis Adams is
Lewis
his name.
Adams.
Yeah.
Yes. And then I understand there are a lot of famous people who went there, like Lionel Richie.
Yeah, Lionel Richie actually sent flowers to my aunt's grave in August.
Oh,
his grandmother lived next door to my mother's parents.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. And Tom Joyner.
Tom Joyner. Yes. Now, the Tuskegee Airmen, they came along too. That's very famous.
Right.
Was that after he had died, or?
Yeah, that was after he died, but there were things that were going, I think it was the science, or the aeronautic space program that was there, that brought them there. And there was things that he was instrumental, the vision, he had the vision was developed, and so it was a perfect place for them to begin.
Booker T. Washington, your great-great-grandfather
My
had that vision.
great-grandfather. Not for the Tuskegee Airmen, but just for the aeronautical space program, those type of things that, you know, he was put in place, or the idea for them.
Yes.
And they took off after he died. And so because of what was there, when Tuskegee Airmen were looking for somewhere, that was just the perfect place.
Yeah, that's so important. When I heard you talk about his character building book and the fact that he had other books that he wrote as well.
Yeah.
And I remember buying some motivational cards that had some of his statements on there.
Me too, yeah.
Yeah, they're very powerful. Yeah, and I do believe that the importance of his having written down some of his visions, that shows that people who have ideas, if they will share them or even put them in writing and leave them as a legacy within a family. That's why I think a journal is very nice too. I know Oprah Winfrey talks about journaling, writing down your ideas.
Yeah, well,
some of that's private too.
Yeah, well, on the back of our book, my cousin and I co-authored a book, Timeless Treasures, Reflections of God's Word and the Wisdom of Booker T. Washington. And on the back it shows where he predicted this day with Barack Obama pretty much. I mean, in his words, he said, we're coming up, we're bursting up. You know, you're not going to be able to stop our progress. He said, with education, with this, with that, you know, you won't be able to stop us. I'm not saying it, you know, exactly how he said it, but that's why we put it on the back of the book, because we said even if people don't buy it, if they pick it up, they'll see how powerful he was. Like
where can the title of your book, and where can they get your book?
Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and it's Timeless Treasures, Reflections of God's Word and the Wisdom of Booker T. Washington.
All right, say that again, because it's quite a long title.
Timeless Treasures, and its subtitle is Reflection of God's Words and the Wisdom of Booker T. Washington. But if you Google Timeless Treasure, Booker T. Washington, or my name, Sarah Rush, it will come up.
Sarah Rush.
Yeah.
All right, and it's called Timeless Treasures.
Yes.
Plural.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, because he had so many things that were timeless.
Yes.
Like that lifting the veil and starting from the beginning.
Yeah.
I'd like to thank you so much for your work. And number 16.
Thank
1
you.
plus 6 equals 7. I don't know if that means anything.
It does.
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.